I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. Today, on my Patreon and Ko-Fi supported channel about topics in Norse language, myth, and runes, I hope you'll join me in taking a quick look at the pigs of Norse mythology. Now I realize that it might sound like I'm trying to, insult people who make money off of plagiarizing things scholars have done in Norse mythology, or publishing other people's translations as their own. While I certainly know about such people, I'm talking about literal pigs, or at least mythical pigs. So of course the most famous is Gullinbursti. This is the that means golden whisker. This is the boar that is associated with either Freyr or his sister Freyja. We hear a fair amount about this boar in the Prose Edda. Now in Skaldskaparmál, the second part of Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda, we read about how this boar was created. And I've told more about the story elsewhere in talking about the treasures of the gods, but of course we're told that there was a time when Loki cut off the hair of Siv, Thor's wife, til lavisi, basically for the sake of lying for the lulz. And Thor said he would break his head unless he got her some new hair made. And so Loki went to some dwarves who are identified as Ivaldisunir, sons of Ivaldi, and had them make a new head of hair for Siv that was made of pure gold. They also made some other cool stuff, like they made the ship Skíðblatnir that can be folded up and put in a pocket. And they made Gungnir, Odin's spear. But then Loki went and bet his head with some other dwarves, specifically some brothers named Sindri and Brokkr, so like Cinder and Badger. Suddenly seems like kind of Breaking Bad, right? And he bet his head they couldn't make 3 better treasures. And again, I've told the story in more detail elsewhere, but they make Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, Draupnir, Odin's ring that drops 8 copies of itself every night, and then they make Gullinbursti out of a boar skin. And we're told specifically in that story that Gullinbursti, who was given to Freyr at the end, glows, so it's never so dark there's not a light from Gullinbursti, and his whiskers are literally gold. It also looks like Freyr shows up in perhaps a chariot drawn by Gullinbursti at Baldur's funeral, according to the part of the Prose Edda called Gylfaginning. There we also read an alternative name for the boar, Slíðrugtani, which looks like scabbard tooth, the sheathed tooth, which I guess makes sense if you look at a pig's mouth. In the poem Hyndluljóð, or Völuspá in Skama, which is not in the Codex Regius manuscript, the Poetic Edda, but is usually included with translations and editions of the Poetic Edda, including mine, because it's of similar material. We have Freyja, so Freyr's sister, showing up to talk to a witch or Jotun woman, at any rate, a woman who's on the wrong side of the cosmic tracks, and get information about the family of a young nobleman named Ottar. And it looks like, from the way that the witch and she talk to each other, that the boar that she shows up riding, which she does call Gullinbursti, she also calls him Hildisvíni, like battle swine, is Ottar in disguise. That's kind of interesting. I don't think that we need to read that as like an alternative origin story for Gullinbursti as being like a transformed human Norse king or something, although it's not possible that could be the situation. At any rate, it shows that she too is associated with the boar and can travel with it, even ride on it, which is kind of an odd image. Otherwise, there's not really any like extra information about Gullinbursti beyond that. There's no information about him really in the Poetic Edda either. But in the Poetic Edda, we do hear about the pig that is eaten in Valhall, or Valhalla. And there's also the interesting phenomenon of the Sonargolter, the atonement boar that one swears oaths on. So take a moment to look at this little message from my friends at Partners Grant Frost. I'll be right back to talk about those. So in the poem Grímnismál in the Poetic Edda, and this information is also relayed by Snorri Sturluson, who quotes it and expands on it a little bit in the Prose Edda, we read that the men who have died and gone to Valhalla, drink mead that comes from the udders of the she-goat Sæhrímnir, and they also eat the meat of the boar named Sæhrímnir, which is maybe like sea foamer or sea icer or something like that. It's hard to see the exact sense that we're supposed to get from the meaning of his name. This boar apparently is just like endlessly slaughtered and then cooked in Valhall and then brought back to life. It might remind you a little bit of how Thor kills his goats and eats them with Loki and the farm family on the way to Utgard the Lokis, that other story in the Prose Edda, and then brings him back to life the next day. Seems like this is just a never-ending bore. For 372 pages fans, here's a little deep cut reference. Maybe this is the ever-present pork. Another pig that shows up quite a bit in Norse myth is the Sonargolter, so atonement boar. That word Sonar is the genitive singular for word son. It's probably related to German Sühne, atonement. And very notable example of this boar is in the saga of Hervor and Haderek, available in an English translation by me, together with Rolf Saga Krake in my book Two Sagas of Mythical Heroes from Haggard Publishing. We hear that King Haerekr, the popular mighty king of that saga, had a huge boar, also with golden whiskers, brought up so that it was as big as a bull, and he had his men lay hands on it and take oaths on it. We also hear of a Sonargolter, a boar that men take oaths on in the prose that's preserved in the Codex Regius of the Poetic Edda around the poem Helgakvida Hjörvarth's Sonar. So that's the first poem about Helgi in my translation, or in some editions and translations you'll see it's the second poem about Helgi between the two Helgakvida Hundingsmanna poems. But I move it to the front so that, because it's a little bit more chronologically contiguous that way, at least it puts the two Helgi Hundingsmanna poems together. What are pigs of the Norse? I don't think there's any special symbolism to them. There doesn't seem to be as emphatic of boar-related imagery as there is around, say, wolves, bears, horses, ravens, eagles. But we do see them some, the pre-Norse culture, the Vendel or migration period, boars are a common element on helmets. There's a certain amount of boar imagery even into the Viking Age too. Surely all this has to do with the fact that the boar is a pretty aggressive animal who carries his swords as part of him, right? They're also fairly fecund, sexual animals, so though they may not be as potent, as it were, a masculine symbol as the stallion in that way, I think there's probably also an element of that virility cult in the appearances of the boar in Norse myth. The association with Freyr and Freyja, these Vanir deities, is interesting. Of course, the Vanir seem to be pretty strongly associated as a group with the natural world and with its products through agriculture and fertility, so it makes sense as a being to be associated with them. I've always wondered a little bit about Freyja and her cat. which are so very briefly mentioned in the prose Edda. You know, why Freya is associated with cats is a little bit hard to see, but it's a little bit easier to see why she and her brother might be associated with a boar. So, you know, I'm not trying to say Snorri is mistaken about the cat thing, but her showing up maybe at Baldur's funeral with her brother, you know, riding their boars, is maybe an older Viking age picture than whatever exactly the cat thing comes from. See another video I made recently about what little there is said about her cats. For now, I hope everyone out there knows I appreciate you for reading my books, watching my videos, supporting the channel at Patreon and Ko-Fi, taking my old Norse class, and from beautiful Colorado, in the usual way, I'm wishing you all the best.